7 kingdoms to rule. 1 king, 7 kingdoms.
Lord Stark, King Joffrey and the Queen Regent request your presence in the throne room.
King Joffrey?
King Robert is gone. The gods give him rest.
Robert Baratheon's death was the spark that ignited the War of the Five Kings, plunging Westeros into chaos. But what if Robert had survived? Would Westeros have remained stable under his reign, or would the hidden tensions in King's Landing have still erupted into war? What would become of Ned Stark, of the Lannisters, and of the Baratheon brothers who sought the throne? With Robert still on the Iron Throne, would Daenerys' return be met with swift death, or an even greater challenge? This is the story of a realm where the stag still rules, but the Game of Thrones is far from over. Chapter 1. The Hunt That Didn't End in Blood. The Kingswood is alive with the sounds of men and hounds. Robert Baratheon charges through the undergrowth, spear in hand, his laughter echoing through the trees. A massive boar snorts in the clearing ahead, its black eyes locked onto the charging king. The beast lunges, the spear finds its mark. Robert stumbles back, panting, blood spattered across his chest, not his own. The boar lets out a final ragged breath before going still. Sir Barristan Selmy steps forward, sword still drawn. "Your Grace, are you injured?" "Bah, a scratch at most. That pig fought like a Dornishman, wild but stupid." He wipes his brow, laughing. The men cheer. Lancel Lannister, standing stiffly to the side, watches with wide eyes. The wine he constantly served should have weakened him, slowed his movements and dulled his reflexes, but the king still stands. Robert claps Barristan on the shoulder. "Come, let's drink to victory and bring that beast back to the Red Keep. I'll have its head mounted in my hall." Chapter 2. The Gathering Storm. The Red Keep is tense. Servants whisper behind their hands, exchanging uneasy glances. Maesters hurry through the halls, summoned to the royal chambers to tend to the king's wounds, though there are few. Robert is back, alive, drinking, laughing. Cersei Lannister stands in the Queen's solar, fingers curled around the stem of a goblet, watching the city from her window. Below, the streets are alive with revelry. The king's survival is cause for celebration. For her, it is a disaster. Jaime stands at her side, arms crossed. "You should be smiling, sister. Your loving husband returns." He wasn't supposed to. Lancel swore the wine was strong enough. Then Lancel is a fool. It was always a risk. The boar was meant to finish him. But now we adapt. Chapter 3. The Weight of the Crown. The halls of the Red Keep buzzed with cautious energy. The king had returned, not in a coffin, but on his own 2 feet. Servants moved quicker, avoiding lingering in corners where whispers festered. The small council chamber, once expecting to convene in mourning, now awaited a king who refused to die. At the head of the table, Robert Baratheon was very much alive. He leaned back in his chair, goblet in hand, his wound barely a memory. He had spent the night drinking and toasting his own survival, and by the gods, he had earned it. But beneath the revelry, the city held its breath. Ned Stark sat to his right, arms folded. He had waited long enough. "7 hells, Stark, you look worse than me. We need to talk." "7 hells, Ned. Can we not celebrate my survival for one goddamned moment?" "That's exactly why we need to talk." "Go on then, say what you came to say." Ned hesitated. He had spent sleepless nights preparing for this moment. He had told himself that the truth mattered, that Robert needed to know. But looking at his oldest friend, something in him wavered. Would Robert even believe it? Or had Cersei already wrapped her poison around him? The weight of it pressed down on him. The choice was his, and whatever he said next would change everything. "It's about Joffrey." "Go on." "Joffrey is not your son." Silence. The torches crackled against the stone. Robert didn't blink, didn't move. Then he laughed, a deep, bitter sound. "You're not the first man to say it. Jon Arryn asked questions before he died. I asked them myself when the boy was young. But I turned away, Ned. I looked at him, and I saw what I wanted to see. What would you have me do? March to the throne room, drag the Queen through the streets, make war on the family that holds my kingdom together? I would have you do what is right." "And what is right, Ned? Kill Joffrey, name Stannis my heir, watch the realm tear itself apart? If you don't act now, the rot will spread. Leave it with me." For how long? Robert didn't answer, and that, in itself, was an answer. Chapter 4. A Queen in Turmoil. King's Landing pulsed with its usual rhythm. Merchants called out in the bustling markets, noblemen whispered in halls, and the taverns spilled over with drunken laughter. The king had returned from his hunt, and the realm continued as it always had. Cersei sat in her solar, staring into her goblet of wine. It was supposed to be over. Robert should have died in the Kingswood. The boar, the wine, it should have worked. Instead, he had come back laughing, feasting and drinking as though nothing had changed. But something had changed. Robert knew. She had seen it in his eyes, felt it in the way he looked at her across the feast table. Not with the usual contempt, but with awareness. And Robert Baratheon, for all his vices, was a man of action. Jaime entered without knocking, his golden hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "He's waiting." "I know." Stark told him, didn't he? Of course he did. Stark doesn't know how to keep his mouth shut. So what do? We don't wait for Robert to act. We move first. Move? How? We make sure he never gets the chance to take my children's throne. Robert sat in his chambers, the firelight flickering against the stone walls. The wine sat untouched beside him. He had made his choice. Ned stood before him, arms crossed. "Seven hells, Ned. We won a war to put me on this throne, and now I have to start another just to keep it." "You wouldn't have to if you had seen the truth sooner." "You sound like Stannis." Ned crossed the room, lowering his voice. "You have to name an heir, Robert. You remove Joffrey, Tommen and Myrcella from succession. Who takes their place? You think it's so simple? I name Stannis and what happens? Renly will never accept it. The lords love Renly, not Stannis. They'll follow him." "Then name him instead." "Renly is a boy playing at being a man. Stannis is too rigid. Renly is too soft. If I name one, the other rebels, and we bleed the realm dry before the real war even begins." "Then you must act fast, before either of them can move against you." "There's another problem. Tywin Lannister. This kingdom bleeds gold, Ned, and almost all of it comes from Casterly Rock. You think I don't know where my coin comes from? The throne is drowning in debt, and the Lannisters hold the purse strings. If I move against Cersei, I don't just make an enemy of her, I make an enemy of Tywin." Ned had no answer for that, because Robert was right. The Lannisters had bankrolled the throne for years. If Tywin turned against him, if the money stopped flowing, the realm would collapse under its own weight. Robert exhaled, rubbing his temples. "And that's the question, isn't it? Do I fight a war against my own wife, risk turning the richest man in the Seven Kingdoms against me, and name an heir who half the realm won't follow? Or do I do what I've always done? Drink, fight, and let the problems rot? You do what is right, no matter the cost. Have my men ready. At dawn, we end this." The Red Keep did not sleep. The Lannister guards moved quietly, purposefully. In the dead of night, Cersei made her move. A squad of Lannister men approached Robert's chambers, their boots silent on the stone floors. The king's personal guard had been sent away, ordered elsewhere by a forged decree. Inside, Robert sat alone. The door opened. The first blade never came, because Robert was already standing, and in his hand was his warhammer. Steel clashed against steel. The first of Cersei's men barely had time to react before Robert swung. The warhammer struck, crushing a man's skull in one blow. Blood sprayed across the stone walls. Another man lunged. Robert dodged, grabbed the soldier by the throat and slammed him against the table. The wood splintered under the weight. The third soldier hesitated. Robert turned to him, breathing hard, blood dripping from the hammer's edge. "Run!" The man ran. Robert wiped the sweat from his brow. He could still hear fighting in the halls. So, Cersei had planned for more than just one death. Robert grinned. "Foolish woman." He grabbed his sword and stormed into the corridors of the Red Keep. Jaime Lannister draws his blade. Jaime had expected blood. He hadn't expected Robert himself to be the one dealing it. The king strode through the halls, his hammer slick with red, his chest heaving. Behind him, Lannister men lay broken in heaps. Robert's gaze found Jaime. "Step aside. You know I can't do that. Do you even believe in her, Kingslayer?" "I believe in my family." "Then die with them." The two men clashed. Robert swung first. Jaime dodged. He countered, his blade finding armour but not flesh. Robert was older, slower, but he was still a bull in battle. Jaime ducked a second blow, moving to strike, but Robert caught him. A fist to the jaw, a boot to the chest. Jaime staggered, spitting blood. Robert grinned. "Not so fast without a boy king to protect, are you?" "Faster than you." Robert raised his hammer for the final blow. A horn sounded. The castle was being surrounded. Robert froze. Jaime's eyes flickered toward the gates. House Lannister had arrived. The war drums sounded before dawn. From the battlements, Robert watched as thousands of Lannister soldiers gathered beyond the city walls. Tywin Lannister had wasted no time. Beside Robert stood Ned Stark. "If we do not strike first, they will." "Then we strike first." The banners of House Baratheon rose above the Red Keep. The banners of House Lannister waited at the gates. And in the streets of King's Landing, the people whispered, "War has come again." Chapter 5. The Siege of King's Landing. The Golden Lion and the Crowned Stag stood at the brink of war. From the battlements, Robert Baratheon watched as thousands of Lannister soldiers gathered beyond the city walls. The red and gold banners of House Lannister flickered in the wind, their forces waiting for the order to advance. A war horn echoed through the Red Keep, and just like that, King's Landing belonged to the battlefield. Beyond the city gates, Tywin Lannister watched with cold precision. The golden army of Casterly Rock stretched across the horizon, a disciplined force led by battle-hardened commanders. Jaime had failed, but Tywin had no intention of letting Robert hold the city. Robert was always a warrior before a king, and warriors die. Sir Kevan Lannister rode beside him, his face grim. "They still hold the walls, my lord. They will hold for now. The city may belong to Robert, but its purse belongs to me." Lannister scowled. "Lord Hand, ravens from the Reach. Lord Mace Tyrell has yet to declare for either side. Then we will give him a reason." Inside the Red Keep, Robert stormed through the war room, his armour still dented from his fight with Jaime. The council table was scattered with battle plans and maps marked with red ink. Renly Baratheon stood with his arms crossed. "You mean to fight this war alone, brother? What are you suggesting?" "That we do not fight alone. There is still a kingdom beyond these walls. You have one brother in the capital. Perhaps it is time to bring the other. You want Stannis? He wants what he is owed. And right now, we need every sword that is loyal to our name. Stannis will not wait in the shadows. If we summon him, he will demand to be heir." "7 hells!" "Well, brother, what will it be? A war against the lions? Or a war against your own blood?" The caves beneath the Red Keep were dark and damp. Cersei Lannister moved swiftly, her children at her side. Joffrey sulked, but Tommen and Myrcella walked in quiet fear. The path was lined with torches, the air thick with the scent of seawater. Sir Boros Blount of the King's Guard followed close behind. "We should have left yesterday." Jaime believed he could hold the castle. Jaime was wrong. "When we reach the ships, you will listen to everything I say." "I should be in the throne room, leading the city." The throne room belongs to your drunkard father for now, but it will not last. Do you want to die here, Joffrey? Or do you want to return with an army? With an army. Good boy. They descended into the darkness. The first trebuchet fired before sunrise. Lannister forces surged toward the walls, battering rams slamming against the city gates. Flaming projectiles lit the sky, striking against the outer defences. From above, Baratheon archers loosed volleys of arrows. The battlements were lined with armoured men, defenders standing firm against the Lion's assault. Robert stood on the walls, warhammer in hand. "Is this all you've got, old man?" The Lannisters kept coming. Ned Stark rode through the inner city, barking orders. Renly was missing from the battle, already sending ravens. Chapter 6. Stannis makes his move. The storm had come to King's Landing. From the walls of the Red Keep, Robert Baratheon watched flaming projectiles crash against the city gates. The golden lion banners of House Lannister stood firm beyond the walls, unrelenting in their siege. But Robert wasn't worried about Tywin's swords. He was worried about his brothers. The winds howled across the blackened cliffs of Dragonstone. The sea churned, restless beneath a sky heavy with storm clouds. Inside the great hall, Stannis Baratheon sat at the long table, his fingers drumming against the wood. A letter lay before him, the wax seal broken. Renly's words had been clear. "The Iron Throne belongs to our house. King Robert calls you to war." Across the table, Sir Davos Seaworth studied his lord carefully. "If you mean to march, we must do so soon. The war has already begun without you." Robert thinks like a soldier. He believes a war is won with strength alone. But the throne is not a battlefield. It is a game. And what is your move? "We do not march alone." The doors opened. Melisandre of Ashai stepped into the room, her red robes flowing like liquid fire. "The night is dark, Lord Stannis, and full of terrors. The Baratheons have never feared the dark. Only fools fear what they do not understand. Then let us ensure that it is Robert's enemies who fear what comes next." In King's Landing, the streets burned. Siege fire had torn through the markets, smoke curling into the sky. Inside the Red Keep, Robert paced. Ned stood near the window, his gaze locked on the distant Lannister army. "We cannot hold this city forever." "Have you so little faith in me, Stark?" "Faith does not win wars. Soldiers do." "Then it is time we give our soldiers something to fight for." Renly entered, boots echoing against the stone. A raven has returned from Dragonstone. "And?" "Stannis sails for King's Landing." "Then we will see if my brother is still a Baratheon at heart." In the Lannister camp, Tywin Lannister stood beneath his crimson war tent, listening as his generals debated. "The walls hold, but for how long? If we press the assault, the city will burn." "Then let it burn." "My lord, even if we take the city, we would rule over ashes." "And would you rather kneel to Lord Baratheon?" No one spoke. Then a scout burst into the tent. "Lord Tywin, ships on the horizon." "Whose banners?" "House Baratheon." "Ready the men. The game is about to change." At dawn, the sea was black with ships. The banners of House Baratheon whipped in the wind. The stag of Dragonstone flying beside the stag of Storm's End. On the deck of his flagship, Stannis Baratheon stood motionless. The city of King's Landing lay ahead. The Lannisters lay in wait, and the fate of Westeros hung in the balance. "Send word to Robert. We make landfall within the hour." The deckhand rushed to obey. Behind Stannis, Melisandre stepped forward. "Lord of Light smiles upon you, my king." "Then let him watch, because today we will see who truly holds the Iron Throne." The war horn sounded, and the Battle of King's Landing had begun. Chapter 7. The Battle. The horns of war sounded across Blackwater Bay. From the battlements of the Red Keep, Robert Baratheon stood unmoving, his warhammer in hand. The fleet had arrived. His brothers' banners dotted the horizon, their black sails a promise of bloodshed. At his side, Ned Stark watched the chaos unfold. They're landing. Aye. The Baratheon fleet crashed against the docks, unloading ranks of armoured men. Dragonstone banners, Storm's End banners. Stannis had arrived, but the gates had not yet opened. Robert turned toward Renly. "Tell my men, open the gates. We ride out to meet them." Renly didn't move. Robert's eyes narrowed. "Renly!" "The gates stay closed." "What did you just say?" "We can't let them in. Not yet." "What are you doing, Renly?" "I sent the Raven. I summoned Stannis. But this war is bigger than Robert or Stannis. The realm needs more than a warrior." "And who does the realm need, little brother?" "Me." The world seemed to stand still. Outside the city, Stannis' forces charged forward. Beyond the walls, Tywin Lannister's men moved into formation. And inside King's Landing, a Baratheon turned against his own. "You wouldn't dare." "You always said I was soft, but Robert, you're not a king. You never were." Robert raised his hammer. "Then come and take my throne, boy." A kingdom divided. The gates of King's Landing stood shut. Stannis' fleet had arrived, but Renly had made his move. Robert Baratheon had survived assassins, betrayal and siege. But could he survive his own family? Beyond the walls, Tywin Lannister waited. Inside, the stag tore itself apart. And somewhere in the shadows, Cersei was still playing the game. What do you think lies ahead for King's Landing? Will Robert hold the throne, or has his time already run out? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to catch part 2 of this epic story.